Okay, welcome to 5 Ways to Jumpstart Your Creativity. I'm Dr. Rensel, and we're going to do this. Let's go. So, I'm here to provide more resources so we can beat overwhelm and stuck for women in medicine. I feel like we have a lot of resources, but there's a lot of overwhelm and stuck. So let's talk through it and figure this out together, right? I founded a company called Brain Fresh, and I'm a neurologist, and I created a course, a time management course using brain-based tools. And I did that because I see women in medicine working so hard, and the system, quote unquote, has a lot of stressors in it and a lot of gender inequities. So I wanted to remind people of the amazing brain science and brain powers that they have. So let's jump in. So your brain, it's a masterpiece, right? It's the most complex organ. People have been trying to replicate it and they cannot. So let's use what we know about the brain and really master how we use our precious time, because time is precious, you're precious, and the brain is precious, right? So let's figure this out. So who is this talk for today? So this is for you. It's for people like you, that it's for you that want to help others, want to feel creative, want to really feel and turn up those internal powers that we have, because there's so many external pressures in medicine and other professions. And so I really want to, use the science so that you can actually feel and have actionable tools to turn up your internal powers. Because you want to keep accomplishing and growing, and you want some guidance on what's the next step. And how do you deal with that fear when you want to take that next step and you're considering something, but that fear just blows up, right? So we're going to talk about building confidence too. So this is for you today. I'll start with talking about medicine because this is my business. I'm a neurologist. This is referring to a survey in a few years ago, and 181 neurologists answered, and 35% were dissatisfied with their position. 42% had symptoms of burnout. Almost 60% felt like they didn't really have enough time to do their work and document their work, and found the environment very stressful, lack of control over their schedule, a lot of, work hours, et cetera. And, day to day, they're still feeling that gender discrimination. So more and more studies have shown that gender discrimination persists in surgery and the way we're paid, et cetera. So what can we do about it? How do we tap into our own powers so we can really feel our creativity and not react to all those pressures in our business? So we're going to go over these 5 ways to spark your creativity. You've got this. So I'm going to start with this list, but we'll go through it throughout the talk. And so what will we learn in this hour? Well, again, I want to remind you of your internal powers. You have this neuroscience, you have these neuro powers, and there's ways that we can manipulate them and turn them up. Again, because the external world kind of puts these pressure on us. And so we have to realize our own internal powers and ways to really turn that up. So we're not really going to wait for the system to change us or to value us or validate us. We're going to use, I have developed a framework for you. It's a course called Synapse, and it's a way to just go step by step to enhance your own internal neural powers so you can tap into those. So we're going to learn ways we can enhance our creativity, our confidence, our focus, and just be really clear about where to put our time and energy. So let's start about today, this right now. What's going okay for you? What is going well in 2022 so far? Why don't you grab a piece of paper and a pen, and we'll write a few notes while we do this. So write a couple things. What's going well for you? I'll say for me, I just got my application in for my associate professorship. It's almost done. Waiting on some letters. It was just a lot of paperwork and tedious things. And I'm glad that that's behind me. I'm glad that that's in. I'm glad to be with you here today. I'm glad to put some time into Synapse and try to, get you introduced to all these internal powers and ways that you can really tune it up and turn it up today. So what is going well for you? Hopefully you had a couple things to write down. And does this sound like you? You've accomplished at a high level. You have a lot of degrees. You've been through a lot of schooling. You've accomplished a lot of things, but you're still hoping for a little bit more joy or creativity, some clarity. Where do I put my time next? What should I do next? How can I keep life interesting and exciting? And how do I keep people around me that really value, your internal strengths and powers, and not feel like just too much pressure? How can you modulate those daily actions that you take so that you can really tap into your internal powers? And you really want a clear plan. How do you keep life interesting? I really want to know how to do that. You went to med school, you went to graduate school, but now you're feeling stuck or just really busy and not really knowing just what the next steps are. Not a lot of peaceful in the day. So if that sounds like you, let's nail this and keep going. So would you like some guidance for the next steps? Where are your questions? I would like some guidance in this area or this area. Why don't you write a few down that you would love some more clarity with? 2022 is a big year. We're going into approaching the second month of 2022. And, it's interesting because COVID is still lingering. It's changed our lives for a long time. And what can we do? How do we keep going? How do we keep learning? How do we stay creative? How do we keep people in our lives that are really challenging us? Let's figure this out, right? We don't want to waste time. We see the importance of really valuing our time because of all the pressures related to COVID over the last few years. At least for me personally, it's made it very clear where my priorities are. A lot less jewelry, a lot more connections, so I'm realizing I certainly love jewelry, of course, but there's things that were just, I loved, and I loved they were kind of icing on the cake, but COVID has really drilled down, like, what are the basics that I really need in my life? And my family, number one, and then, keeping life interesting. And what does that mean for me? And that's growing, keep growing and learning new ideas. That's what I really love, and meeting new people. So for me, is there a problem? You might say there's a problem. You might say, no, it's no problem. It's just that there's no like brain class. How do we learn how to optimize brain science and what we know about how the brain works? So for busy, growing professionals, we don't really learn how to, in my experience, to tap into our neuroscience tools unless we get burned out, unless we have a family member suffering with depression. So, it's time really to learn before there's a problem, right? We want to be preemptive about this. So, my course that I designed is called Synapse. And after you have gone through Synapse, you're going to learn how to flex those neural powers so you feel productive, you feel more focused, you feel more creative. That's what we're going to focus on because, we can see the world and we can get frustrated about the world, but we really have control over so many things. So we want to put our focus where we actually have control over, right? So after Synapse, you're going to feel energized. You're going to feel more clear, more focused, more enthused because you have a plan, right? So as humans, we get stuck and we kind of freeze when there's a lot of options, but we're not sure the next step. When we don't have a clear plan, we tend to freeze. That's our amygdala is turning on, like there's fear because there's not a clear plan. So let's change that and let's make a clear plan. So we feel relaxed, we have a plan, we have it all set. We'll feel more motivated because we know our next steps. We'll have a certain peace of mind. So Synapse will actually give you an achievable peace of mind. One of my clients said, she got her mojo back going through Synapse. And another client recently told me, she said it was just a kindness to her brain. Like she learned so much science that she felt like she had a kindness toward her brain and she knew how to work with it. As opposed to getting frustrated with it. So why me? Why listen to what I have to say? Well, I'm a neuroimmunologist, I'm a coach, I'm a business owner, and I really love looking at new ideas. And I love looking at the brain and, neuroscience from different angles. So I love reading the business, the neuroscience of teams. I love reading about, economics. So that's my love. And I love consulting for other companies and helping them understand how neuroscience really influences how their teams are working, how to get the best from their team members. So I'm a mom of four. These are some of my pictures of my family, pictures of me doing some consulting work, a lot of Zoom. And then I've started a joint venture with Allie Hively where we're supporting residents. So we have a resident support program. So doctors in training support program, which has been really wonderful to see them, enhance their resiliency, and something called self-efficacy, which is knowing like, what are the next steps? It's that confusion that we feel stuck when we're not sure of the next step. So we're trying to clarify that according to our own neuroscience, because medicine's challenging. Since 1974 in medicine, we've been talking about burnout. So what is burnout? It has a very particularly specific definition. But it's hard to relate to others. It's hard to be empathetic when you're burnout. You don't have that emotional attachment to others. And so, you got just kind of keep pulling away, or wanting to get out and run the other way. So, and that's been discussed in the literature since the early 70s. And a recent, article again showed very high rates related to COVID. So what are we concerned about in medicine at this time of COVID? Burnout is a big one, right? So we're concerned about COVID. We're concerned about our goals. We're concerned about getting our work done, our electronic medical records, our projects, our professorship levels, our colleagues, our call schedules, politics, our neighbors, all these kind of things. So really all we have control over is what's in the center. What do we have control over actually is our circle of influence. Where can we have influence in the system, in our daily lives, in our career plans? And that's what we need to really put our energy and our focus on, is where we can influence. So where is our control, or where can we put our influence on what we're focusing on what we purchase, on the books that you read, on the things that you say to other people, on the thoughts that you have. So if we say we're stuck, that is a thought. Another thought is, how can I get unstuck? What can I learn about to help me keep my life interesting right now? The choices that you make, the people that you hang out with, the effort that you give towards something, the strategies you use to understand something, what you're learning. And so all of those things, that's where we have influence over. So that's where we need to put our time and energy. So why don't you list a few things that you today can have control over? What can you control today? An easy one is your thoughts. Like, I can control that I'm with you today. I'm going to share some research. I'm going to hope that you feel enthused and you understand the powers that you have internally, no matter what you're hearing from your environment or your team or the culture with where you work, so that you have the powers to really keep life interesting, to learn, to get some new tools, so you can change your knowledge, you can enhance your knowledge, and you can change your skills. So that's what I can control today, is sharing some things with you to hope that you indeed, take the action and learn something new, and, feel a little bit more empowered. So, yes, absolutely, you have control over things. So today there's something new to learn. There's no judgment here. We don't do judgment. We only do self-compassion. We know neuroscience-wise, we are wired to learn. That's how we're wired. And we're not done. There's still not yet, that we can still, there's still time to do things. You are where you are today. That's not where you're going to be in a year, as if you keep learning, right? So we need to keep learning, and giving yourself no judgment zone and self-compassion. So my framework, I like to refer to it as synapse. Just think of wires connected together. That's how we're wired in our brain. We have billions of nerves in our brain that are like wires connected. And I want to help you connect more of your wires so that you feel creative. You can really tap into your own creativity. You feel that confidence, and you feel very clear about what exactly are your next steps. So I built this framework exactly to help you walk through that. How do you feel better in these areas, in your creativity, in your confidence, and your clarity? Let's start in detail with the creative zone. How do you actually enhance your creative zone? Well, each day we cycle through different neural cycles. We start through very sympathetic, focused, and then very wide open, perceptive, creative zones. And we go through that each day. Those are also called our sympathetic, parasympathetic, sympathetic, parasympathetic. And we go through that throughout our day. And there's ways we can manipulate that so that we continue to have some creativity in our days, even though we have deadlines and we need to get things done. So I'll walk you through that. We need to talk about the brain's cybersecurity, to treat it like the most precious organ that it is, even more than your laptop and your cell phone. You don't just throw your cell phone around or throw your laptop around. You have a case. You don't throw it in the water, or you recharge it. I want us to think about our brain like that. That it really needs some tender loving care. It needs some attention to stay working at really high creative levels. And then absolutely need to prioritize fun, something that you enjoy in your day with other people is the best way. Because when we're in fun, that's a no judgment zone. It's a pleasant time. So you actually, fun generally means it's very positive emotions. And that's a really great state for the brain to get into its creative zones. So let's look at one way to spark your creativity. One way is to recall a very safe time or a safe person from the past. If you want to jot that down on your paper. I'll tell you one thing is I'm drinking a mug with a picture of my mom on it. Her name's Rita. She's passed, but I love, looking at that picture. She was an amazing person. Just very inspirational and supportive, and fun. She really prioritized fun in her life. So that's when I think of someone like that, a safe time or a safe person. I felt very safe for her. She was very authentic. She challenged people to be their best person. So who do you think of when you think of a safe time or a safe person in your past? Write that down. What that does is that turns on, positive emotions when you think of those kind of people in your lives. It's also great to just drop them a note if they're still living. If they're not, just, feel them and feel those feelings in regards to them, or maybe share a lesson that they taught you with someone else. Because when you have those positive remembrances of these times, it turns on the positive feelings, it'll decrease our fear and then turn on a more creative zone, because when positive emotions are present, we're in a more creative state. Here's a long list of some creativity hacks. I'm glad to send this to you. So if you want to reach out or after the webinar, I'm glad to send this to you. But an easy one is jokes, so if you just tell a few jokes or say, hey, Siri, tell me a joke, it reframes things. And so sometimes it gets your brain looking at things from a different angle. So there are some hacks just to, if you're really stuck, you're working on a project and you're just not feeling it. These are some easy ways to get your brain a little more creative. And what is that sympathetic activation I was talking about? So our brain each day goes through sympathetic, parasympathetic, sympathetic, parasympathetic. Sympathetic is activated when something's really important to us, when the outcomes or the events are uncertain, when someone's watching or evaluating us, or when we're thinking about any of those things. So right now, at least in medicine, that's really most of our day. Something's important to us. So when I'm treating a patient, that's very important to me. When I'm listening to their family or their loved ones, that's important to me. That's my priority at that moment. When the outcomes or next events are uncertain, that is life, right? So we have a lot of uncertainty in our lives. We don't know what's going to be the ultimate outcome, but we can take a few steps, right? And then it is an evaluating culture, right? So we get evaluated in medicine. You get evaluated when you Uber. You get evaluated Airbnb. So we're always getting evaluated, right? So then we have to know that's high sympathetic activation, and there's ways we have to kind of counterbalance that with parasympathetic activation. What about when we're working in medicine? When women are working in medicine, we have these persistent challenges. So getting into residency is tough. We're trying to achieve leadership positions. We're trying to get budgetary power, because that means you have some power within medicine. You're trying to increase your academic levels. We're hitting gender bias wherever we are. I just heard a resident talking about her gender bias that she's been experiencing in the operating room, where some of the surgical techs just don't respect her or listen to her when she asks for things like they do the male residents. And that's happening right now. The salaries remain unequitable. So it's persistent, so there's a lot of persistent challenges. And that obviously activates our sympathetic system. So that's another reason we have to kind of counterbalance that. This is a study looking at full-time women faculty from 2009 to 2018 and what's happened over the years. And those lines look pretty flat, right? So there were not great gains. This is AMC data. So full professorship went from 19 to 25 over these 10 years. And so it's pretty disappointing that there's not a greater increase in the leadership and the higher ranked professorships in medicine according to gender, because medical school was 50-50 when I was there, which was 30 years ago now, as of this year. So there's been a lot of time for this to balance out. And so there's obviously a lot of inequities. And this brain cybersecurity, why? We want to keep ourselves sharp, right? We want to make sure we're taking care of the organ that makes us us, that helps us have these creative ideas, that helps us be able to help other people. So let's go back to some sparks. So again, a second way to spark some creativity is to think back to a time that you felt just pure joy. When was that? Just unabridged joy. And again, why does that matter? Why would that help us? If we have a big project, we have a hard deadline, why do we want to sit back and think of a joyful time? Again, if we turn on those positive remembrances and those positive hormones that will come when we're trying to think of a really joyful time, it will decrease our fear zone and get us out of sympathetic and into our more perceptive and creative zone. So that's the way you can manipulate those daily cycles by thinking of a really joyful time. Another way is just to think about your 2022 and just envision a wildly successful 2022. What would that look like for you? And why would that matter? Because when you get your brain just envisioning, it'll just, again, turn on those possibility hormones, what things could look like, positive neurochemicals, and just get your brain, no limits. You don't have to think of how it could happen, just what is a wildly successful 2022 look like to you? And just let your brain go and just write it down or draw pictures of it, and no limits. You don't have to figure out the how. Again, that'll turn on some of those positive cycles so that you get into your parasympathetic system in your high creativity zone. This slide is looking at a foundation called Dr. Lorna Green Foundation. This sadly is referring to a physician that took her own life from suicide. She was, her family tells amazing stories, and the community tells amazing stories about her. All the amazing things she did for her community. She was an emergency room doctor. But this, working in COVID, and she didn't feel, and the negatives of working in healthcare system when you have mental health problems is if you do seek mental health care, sometimes then you have to report that with your license and malpractice. So there's a lot of people looking at this and figuring out, like, is this something that should be related to your license or your malpractice? Because then indeed it decreases, people's ability to reach out and get the care that they need. So we need to normalize that mental health is health. And it shouldn't be a separate, you shouldn't be penalized for seeking mental health if you need it. This mental health is health. So this foundation is doing amazing work and supporting research and working hard in their legislation to get funding to help healthcare workers. And they've been very successful in moving a bill along called the Dr. Lorna Green Healthcare Provider Protection Act. So that it's aimed to reduce and prevent suicide, burnout, mental and behavioral health conditions for healthcare workers. So this is really amazing. So they've been very active in this area, and it's very hopeful, to see people so active, because their hearts have been broken by, healthcare workers suffering. So, we've seen people trying to figure out how to do wellness interventions in medicine. This is referring to a study that was published last year looking at a 6-hour wellness training and texting residents. And what they showed is a stabilization of burnout rates. Well, I would love for more. I don't want to just stabilize burnout rates. I'm hoping to really support the residents. I believe that as doctors in training, that we should be supporting them. And they've been training through COVID, which is extra stressful. So that's why Allie and I put our heads together and worked on something that we call Resident Support Program. It's been used at West Virginia University. It's been used at Washington University. And, it's been really neat to see that the residents are increasing their resiliency numbers and their self-efficacy. So reach out to me if you want more information about that. And AMC has recently, reported just last year, looking at all these wellness initiatives in various areas of medicine, and 50% of the sites had some kind of wellness programming, which is great news. And then some have wellness or well-being champions. So they've promoted them to champions, but the champions had very little training or funding. So again, that goes back to what Dr. Lorna Breen Foundation is trying to do, is to actually have funding so people have some impact. I mean, you can have a wish and a desire to do things, but you need actually to have some funding and some time and some training to get things going. So working as a team, we hope certainly to put our heads together and fund some of these projects, right? So when we get together, we have obviously more impact. And when you have people around you that are the builders and the changers and the doers, that's your network, and they're supporting, and they are our net worth. So the people that we keep around us actually support us, and they are invaluable. So how does your network support you today? When you think of who's in your network, who do you see most often? What are they doing? Are they the builders and the changers and the big idea people? Are they getting things done? Are they living a healthy life? Do they eat healthy? Do they sleep? Do they have fun? So if not, then you realize, oh, I got to add some people in my life that are doing some of these things. Because if we don't keep those people close to us, it will change our behaviors. So we kind of mimic, as humans, we mimic what people do. And so the people that we keep close to us, we're going to assume their behaviors. So if they're not exercising, we're not going to exercise. If they don't keep themselves healthy, we probably won't. So it's really important to be intentional about building your network. So how does your network support you now? I'm thinking of my friend Amy that came to my son's game last night, and we got to sit and chat. And that was wonderful. And we were just sharing resources and sharing about our week. And so, that's really supportive to me, and to, so to keep healthy people around me is just super important. So jot down a few ideas of who's in your network, or who do you need in your network still. If you don't have any exercisers in your network, write that down as a goal. If you don't have any people that eat healthy, write that down as a goal. If you have people in your network that are building their careers, or you don't, write that down as a goal. So how do we use our whole brain? I mean, thank goodness there's been researchers who have done, research and looking at how humans can change. Especially here, I'm referring to a few researchers who have done this with MBA students. So these are students who are trying to develop professionally. They've had very low chance of having long-term change if you did not add the whole brain, looking at your emotions as well, emotional intelligence. So once they also added professional development and emotional intelligence together, they saw dramatic improvements. So Dr. Boyatzis has done work in this. Dr. Ballou has in 1999. So they went from success rate of 2 to 11% up to 67% to 75% of long-term change. So if you really want to change yourself professionally and continue to professionally develop, we have to know something about emotional awareness, emotional intelligence, because that is the whole brain, right? So the brain is our emotional center as well as our intellectual center. So we can't just do half of one. So when we're talking about our creative side, we need to know how to manipulate our neural cycles. We need to know how to really protect and care for our brain. And we need to know how to add fun, right? Because that will keep us creative. So in Synapse, we're going to do that throughout the course. We're going to learn how to enhance our creativity, enhance our confidence, and enhance our clarity of where to put our time. So let's talk a little bit about confidence and our neuroscience. Our brain has something that we call Connectomes, and we'll talk a little bit about that. We each have our own strengths, and we'll talk about that. And then how do you keep building confidence? Because that is a learnable skill, right? So these little dots on these brains are referring to our Connectomes. So everyone's brain has its own pattern, and it makes you good at what you're good at. And in functional MRI imaging studies, they call that your connectome. So the way that your nerves connect is a very special pattern for your brain, and it gives you your gifts and your strengths and your values, and it makes you you. So that we should take some time to figure out what our strengths are, what our gifts are, and what's important to us because of the way our brain is wired. And we want to live in our areas that are our strengths. This image here is referring back to a book called The Big Leap. And it walks you through how to be more active in your zones of genius. So those strengths that your brain has because of how it's wired. So we have zones of incompetence, things we're not very good at, things we're good at, but it's not really where we like to be. We're kind of neutral about it. It's not really satisfying to us. It's not our favorite place to be. I would think for me, I don't know, doing the laundry, mowing the lawn, I could do them, but it's not really great at it. I don't really love doing it. What about excellence? Well, I've been in medicine for a long time. I would say I'm excellent at doing that. That is my area, my expertise. But what's my zone of genius? What am I really good at? What do I love doing? Well, I love connecting with people. I love learning new ideas. I love creating. So I have an artistic side to me and I love that. So I love putting all that together. That's what I do in Synapse. So I love to create this course for you. So it's a creative experience so that you leave with new insights and feel empowered, so that you know exactly, how to really maximize your amazing brain. So that would be more my zone of genius rather than my zone of excellence. And that's an area that we would like for you to figure out because you feel amazing when you work in your zone of genius. And the other thing is what are you doing with your time? How much is your time worth literally? So if you figure out what you took home this month and how many hours you work, then you can figure out your hourly rate. And then you say, well, it's not really worth it for me then to do laundry or what have you, because I can actually make this much an hour. So I might as well put my time toward that. And then you hire out what is not your zone of genius, what is not your zone of excellence, and give it to someone who is their zone of genius, their zone of excellence. Because that's what makes the world go around, right? So if everyone works in their really area of expertise, everyone feels better. That's where their happiness is. So you really want to think about your strengths and really polish that and get to know that. And that's what we do within Synapse. So what would it feel like in your day if you could just work in your zone of genius, that area where people come to you and they say, hey, will you help me with this? I know you're really good at this. People can actually very easily recognize your zone of genius. Sometimes for you, it's hard to realize, but people know. They know what you're really good at and, what you just naturally do. And once you find that, you really want to stay in that zone of genius. So you try to fill a lot of your day with your zone of genius and do everything you can to stay in that. So what do you think is your zone of genius and how can you spend more time there? If you need some help with that, that's something else that we do within Synapse. So what about women in medicine? Is it your zone of genius to work in medicine? Well, women in medicine really have really high quality. I mean, more studies have shown this over the years. Women follow the clinical guidelines to help preventative care so they can help people before there's a problem. They follow those cancer-specific prevention services more often. They get into psychosocial counseling and connections with their patients. So we see better outcomes because of the way women work in medicine. So how can we build our confidence? Because so much in our society says that women need to be quiet and small, and that's not really how we should be working because our work outcomes are very strong and powerful. So when you look at this image, this is one nerve. As I said, our brain has billions of these. And if we want to really enhance our confidence, we need to remember that we can increase our connections from our nerves to make things easier. Think of riding a bike. Think of, when you were training in your profession, how something was really hard at the beginning and then you practiced it over time and you got really good at it. So these nerves, the more they connect in synapse, the more easy the action will be for you. And so we have to think of our confidence as something that we can develop over time. It is related to our neuroscience, our neurotransmitters. So there's little chemicals that jump off the end of the nerves, connect to the other nerves. And there's enzymes that break down or make more of the neurotransmitters. So our confidence level is usually related to our, familial genes related to our neurotransmitters, but it's 25 to 35% of our actions. So we can build a confidence level. So when you think of doing something new, a lot of times it's just fear, like, ooh, I don't think that I deserve to do that. I don't think I have the skills, but that's okay. You know that your actions, you can take one step to build into synapse and to, increase those neurotransmitters moving around because that's what we're made of. We have all those wires in the brain that will connect more the more actions that we take. So there are ways that we can build our confidence. We can learn about our connectome, our special patterns of our own brain. We can learn our strengths, and we can learn how to build our own confidence through our actions. So once we put this all together, we synapse this together because of our power of our wires. One thing that's really important is the environment that we put ourselves into or that we find ourselves in. So our environment will really either support our growth or hinder our growth. So think about the climate. Someone said it's like the background noise. So the background music is the climate. So think of either like a scary horror movie kind of music or very lovely music. That's what they say, like the climate will either encourage growth or inhibit growth. It is the background music of our work. So sometimes you can't put your finger on it, but you just don't feel supported or you don't feel like it's a growth environment. It might be because of how the climate, the music that you feel around you. So if you want to think about how does your work climate support your growth? And if you don't find the work climate to be very supportive, what other climate, excuse me, could you put yourself into? What other environment could you get into? A coaching group or something like join us in Synapse, where we have an accountability group and support each other. So the more that you put supportive people around you, the more you'll be able to practice that confidence and build it, right? So this quote is from Dr. Boyatzis. So he has wonderful books about change and theories of change. So I highly recommend his work. But one of his quotes is related to entropy, which is a physics, it's a science concept that things drift into less desirable state. That is just science, right? So that just happens unless we put some intention to get things back into, a very intentional state, things will drift. So that's one thing that we'll do in Synapse. You just acknowledge, it's no judgment. It's just science, right? That things, if you think of, throw marbles on the floor, they'll just splatter all over. Think of that as entropy. But we can realign according to what our goals are and our desires. So taking one step or two steps or three steps toward your goal or towards something new is fine. So Martin Luther King said, taking that first step up the staircase when you don't see the whole thing, that's fine. That's faith. That's faith that you have neuroscience that will keep learning and building. That's what we do within Synapse. So if we don't enhance or learn about our creativity, we will stay stressed. If we don't learn about our confidence, you'll stay confused. What's the next step, right? And if we don't learn and clarify what's our next step, you stay stuck. You feel like you don't have time. People say that a lot of time, I don't have any time. You have as much time as anybody else, right? So it's just like, what do we do with the time? So what do you need to do to get those results that you really desire? We could just wait for someone to acknowledge you or validate you, or you could take, the bull by the horns and say, I got this. I'm going to really jump into this course and learn about creativity and confidence and clarity and how I can take the brain science and just put it into action, right? So a few more things to spark your creativity. When you're envisioning that wildly successful 2022, the next step would be then to envision the barriers toward it. So time, money, my work is busy, my kids keep me busy. I don't have, my car's old, my boss doesn't seem to care. Like, you're going to have the barriers. And that's fine. Just see the barriers. And then just let your brain go. You don't have to solve it. A lot of times, if you just acknowledge the barriers, your brain will start working on it. So one study showed that if you envisioned your successes and then the barriers and let it go, you had an 87% increase risk, or 87% increase likelihood of achieving your goal if you just envision the barriers. You didn't have to envision how to solve them, but just letting your brain know, I see these barriers, and it will just figure out how to get around or over the barriers, which is wonderful. And then absolutely, we have to set time for feelings, just to acknowledge feelings, just write them down. You don't have to fix them. But if they rule us and we don't acknowledge them, they will, suppress our creativity. So you absolutely have to set time for emotional awareness. It doesn't take long, just writing down a couple feelings, 3 times a day. Just know where you are with your feelings. Just say, yep, I see you. You just have to acknowledge. You don't have to fix. because those will definitely turn on or off our creativity part of our brain. So what can we do today? So we have these abilities to think about synapse. Do we want to wait another 40 years to just let the data stay the same? We can stay stressed and stuck and confused, or we can do something new, right? So I promised you that we would talk about your internal neural powers and how to harness them. And we're not going to wait for the system to change. We can value our powers now. I have a clear framework for you to tap into and just really acknowledge and enhance and get inspired by your own internal neural powers. And then we can learn really how to enhance them, how to enhance your creativity, your confidence, your focus, and just be really clear, just to acknowledge that clarity and have that clarity so you don't feel confused and stressed and stuck. So you have a choice today. You can take an action or you can maintain the status quo. That's fine too. You have a choice. It's your choice to do. Let me tell you about Synapse. So it's a brain-based time management course. It's all digital, so you can do it on your own time. You have access to it for 3 months. So each week we do a new challenge so that we can keep growing and enhancing our neuroscience together. There's an online community so we can share resources and we can acknowledge we are learners and we can support other learners. That's the growth mindset in us, right? And so we have this every 2-week group coaching and accountability group so we can figure it out together. So you don't feel alone, because when you have a network and a group around you, we tend to even get more done, right? So we can encourage effort and persistence. We're not about judgment. It's a no judgment zone. It's only self-compassion. Here's what it looks like when you click into the course. You can get an introduction and you can preview some of this so that you can see what it would look like. And then, it's online, and then you can save it on your phone. So it's easy access on your phone. And there's videos that walk you through each step of the way. So you can just click on the videos. I just want to take this time to say, the women in the workforce, you're rock stars, just pat yourself on the back. You're doing an amazing thing in an environment that doesn't necessarily value us for everything that we are. So the climate is challenging, and it's persistently challenging. It's not fair gender-wise yet, maybe someday, but I'm certainly here to support you in what you need. So I'm glad to send you, I have a video of the top 10 ways to increase joy in the clinic, and quickly so that it doesn't take a long time, and jump into Synapse and we'll just nail the goals and we'll really optimize your own brain powers and figure out how to use them each day. So these are some things that people commonly ask. I'm glad to go through these, or if anybody has questions, feel free, to ask them, but I'll go over these first. So can you do this on your own time? Yes. Is it a one-time fee? Yes. Can you link it to your phone? Yes. Yep. You can save it. And so the login page can be easily accessible on your phone. Is there a private community? Yes. There's an online community within your phone, within the course. So you don't have to have another Facebook group or something. Are there live events? Yes. And you can attend if you like, and they'll be recorded so you can catch them later if you need to. And then I can send a link to the course after the video so you can check it out. So I'll see you inside Synapse. So may your choices reflect your hopes, not your fears. That's a quote from Nelson Mandela. I love that, so a lot of times we do things because of our fears. So I'm hoping that we do things because of our hope, and the neuroscience supports you in that hope. And there's ways to manipulate the neuroscience each day so we feel more hopeful and make our choices accordingly. So I'm glad to take questions. I'll stop the recording. I'll see you in Synapse.